So, our story today is all about Hans my Hedgehog, and this, well, it's a bit of a shift from mythology, maybe in a way, because this is one of Grimm's fairy tales. So not necessarily as old or anywhere near as old as a lot of the myths that we've been looking at so far, but fairy stories, even though this particular version that I'm going to give you today is from Grimm, it's based on something much, much older. This story is one of many stories that can be found across Europe with a similar theme and a similar, characters and events that happen. So we can assume that this story, even though the Brothers Grimm wrote it down, cool. Isla's read a book called The Sisters Grimm. That sounds interesting. Yeah. Even though the Brothers Grimm wrote this down, they were using, knowledge of a story that's much, much older. Exactly how old, we don't know. So today I'm going to give you my own spin on a story that the Grimms have given a spin from, well, way back in time. And it starts, as all good stories do at the beginning, with a baby. Or a cute baby, says Isabel. Yes, a very cute baby. Because Hans is not a normal baby. Hans is a hedgehog. Or at least 50% hedgehog. Not a pure hedgehog. Now, we've got in this story a poor farmer and his wife. Cambyses asks, is there baby murder in this? No. Now, I think today we're actually safe. No one's going to try and... Well, that's not actually true. There are some grim bits, like always, but yeah, there you go. It's not so bad as some of the others, for sure. Oh. So, we've got two parents, a poor farmer, and his wife. And all they want, more than anything in the world, is a baby. They try for many years and they cannot have a baby. Until one day, the farmer, out of frustration, shouts to the heavens, I just want a baby, any old baby, even a hedgehog baby would be fine. And sure enough, 9 months later, his wife gives birth to a baby with, depending on the version, the top half of a hedgehog and the bottom half of a man, or maybe just a strange, a less extreme hybrid, kind of a hedgehoggy kind of baby. But this creature is born, and according to the Brothers Grimm, when they look at it, the mother falls instantly in love, but the father does not. He hates it. Ooh. He looks at it and says, we will never be able to get this baby baptized in the church, and there's only one name that we can possibly call such a child. And his wife goes, well, what's that? And he says, well, obviously, we have to call it Hans my Hedgehog. I don't know why. I don't know why he comes to that conclusion instantly, but apparently that's the only name that can possibly be given to this baby is Hans my Hedgehog. So there you go. Now this little baby, his mother loves him very much, and he is super cute in every way, but his dad does not like the hedgehog boy. He's not a fan of Hans my Hedgehog. He wants a real human boy, not some kind of hedgehog boy hybrid. Now some questions here. What about a full hedgehog that could talk? Yes, I suppose. Now, some of the artwork that I'll show today, it pretty much does show Hans to be full hedgehog, but other artwork shows that he's more human. So you can the exact quantities of hedgehog to human are not made clear in this story at the beginning. So we just need to know that it's a hedgehog boy. Okay, and we can go from where we go there. Now, Fingersnell, correct. It was the father who, at first, prayed for anything, even a hedgehog boy, and he got what he prayed for, didn't he? But he's not a loving father, and he won't let Hans my Hedgehog sleep in a normal bed like a normal boy, like a real boy. Instead, he makes him sleep on a pile of straw behind the oven. And poor old Hans my Hedgehog, he has to stay there for 8 years. His dad completely ignores him. Poor old Hans my Hedgehog, just sleeping there behind the oven on a bed of straw. And his dad hopes against hope that this hedgehog creature, this fiend this disgusting monster will just die, and he doesn't have to worry about it anymore. He's not a good father to a hedgehog boy. Fortunately, though, his mother does look after him, and she gives him plenty of food, and she keeps him warm, and she gives him plenty of cuddles. And by the time he's 8 years old, he's ready to go off to school. Hooray! Now, Anaya, you ask a good question there. Yes, the hedgehog can talk. Hans my hedgehog can talk in human language. I mean, we assume German, because this is a German story. So yes, he can communicate with his mother and father, and he does. He chats to his mum a lot, but his dad just ignores him, pretends he's not there, hopes that he'll just disappear. Oh, grumpy farmer. Um, oh, Heidi, yes. Heidi's one step ahead, because when he's 8 years old, off he goes to school. As we can see here, it's hard being a hedgehog boy. It is hard being a hedgehog boy. The other children are mean to him all the time. You know, he goes to the class and he tries to get on with his work, and they're throwing things at him when the teacher's not looking. And to be honest, the teacher doesn't quite know what to make of this hedgehog boy in the classroom. I mean, it's a bit weird. Now, when adults aren't looking, the other children are mean to Hans my hedgehog. They call him terrible names. They call him spiky. They call him disgusting. They call him a freak. They call him a weirdo. You are a horrible weirdo, Hans, my hedgehog. Go away, go away. They shout as they throw apples at him, which, you know, is not necessarily a bad thing because it means he had apples to eat, but still, he didn't make any friends at school. No one wanted to hang out with him. Everyone was slightly scared of him because, of course, if you go up and, you know, touch him, or he accidentally knocks into you, he can hurt you with his quills. Spiky boy. Most school children are not as spiky as Hans my hedgehog, and so his school days are spent in a sad way, being bullied, trying to avoid the bullies, trying to make himself look small at the back of the class, which, of course, I imagine he just rolls up into a ball like a hedgehog, which makes people ridicule him even more. Oh dear, Alfred has given 0 stars to the children. Yes, 0 out of 10. No marks for the children. The children are mean. I mean, if they'd had any sense, they would have made friends with the hedgehog boy, because I reckon that he would be a pretty useful friend to have. I mean, off the top of my head, I can't think why, but I reckon he would be. You know, there's got to be some skills out there for a hedgehog boy, don't there? Yeah, somewhere where he fits in. But unfortunately, poor Hans my hedgehog, for years he goes to school and gets bullied, and comes home and gets bullied by his dad. The only one who truly loves him and who's truly kind to him is his mum. So, when Hans grows up and he leaves school and he's ready to, you know, go and get a job, or like other boys might be doing, going off and get married, he comes to his dad one day, his dad who has spent the last 15 years of his life ignoring him, and he says, "Dad, I have a request of you. Just 2 things. When you go into town today, can you please take the rooster, the big cockerel, and can you have it shod?" Which means put horseshoes on its feet. Okay, we'll just go with this. And also, I'd like some bagpipes, please. And so, sorry, Grace, I know. They're saying strange things, don't worry. So, yes, the hedgehog, he's asked for a shod rooster and some bagpipes. Now, his dad, he looks at him and he says, "Why would I get you anything?" And Hans says, "Look, if you give me these 2 things, I will leave. I will leave this village. I will leave my house. I will leave my mother. And you won't see me for ages." So, the farmer, he thinks about this. Yeah, okay. It's probably worth some horseshoes on a rooster and some bagpipes to get rid of the freak boy that's been living behind my oven for the last 15 years. He's a heartless man. And so off he goes to the market, and sure enough, he comes home later that day with a rooster that's all nicely shod and some bagpipes. Cyrus asks, how can you put horseshoes on a rooster? I don't know, okay? The Brothers Grimm, maybe back then, they understood how the shodding of roosters happened. All I can assume is that it's not a horseshoe shape, because that wouldn't fit the shape of a rooster's foot, would it? I imagine it must be maybe just some, like, metal claws to go on the bottom of the rooster, just so it doesn't hurt its feet on the road. I don't know. I don't know if it would hurt, Rowan. I mean, putting shoes on a horse doesn't hurt, so I assume. I mean, what happens? I mean, you go to the market one day with a rooster, and you take it to the farrier, the man who makes black horseshoes, and you go, "Can you please put horseshoes on this?" I mean, what's the farrier going to do? I mean, I doubt they're asked very often to shod a rooster, but anyway, he gets shot. That's the important thing. Yeah. Now, uh, uh, there you go. Look, Amelia and Benjamin are telling me they used to put tar on geese feet when they had to walk the geese to market. So that's really good fact, Amelia and Benjamin. Thank you. Maybe they're putting tar on the bottom of the rooster's feet, and that's making it nice and secure. I like that. Good fact. Thank you. Okay, they tarred his feet. We're going with that. Now Hans then. Oh, I suppose it must be warm tar, Cyrus. Yes, maybe not too hot, but warm enough to stick. Yes. And turkeys had leather boots, says Eliza. I didn't know you lot were such experts on the footwear of poultry. I'm quite impressed. Thank you very much, guys. There was me thinking they just made some kind of horseshoe-styly chicken feet. No, I'm an idiot. I don't know anything about shoes. So, here we have a picture of Hans. He leaves home riding his rooster with his bagpipes. I mean, it's weird, isn't it? It is a bit weird. But he doesn't leave alone. He takes with him. Oh, Cambyses asks, what is the rooster called? The rooster doesn't have a name, but I mean, by all means, someone can give me an example of a name, and we can call the rooster that. Um, so, Brian. Okay, we've got Brian the rooster. So off goes Hans my hedgehog. Oh, we've got loads of examples. Dog. Who would call it dog? It's definitely a rooster. So out he rides on Brian, and he doesn't go alone. He takes a few pigs and a couple of donkeys with him as well. And his aim really is just to get as far away from civilization as possible, as far away from the village, as far away from his parents, as far away from the bullies. He just wants to be left alone. Him and Brian. And so they go deep, deep into the Black Forest. Now, the Black Forest sounds a bit scary. It's not really. It's this lovely forest behind me here. But he goes deeper and deeper until he's well away from any other humans or any humans. I don't know if he counts as human, really. He is a Hans my Hedgehog. And he takes his pigs and he takes his donkey and he finds a nice tree. And he flies Brian up there, Brian the rooster. He flies him up and Brian holds onto a branch. And Hans my Hedgehog, he sits there in the tree, looking after his pigs, looking down at them as they snuffle around on the ground. And he plays his bagpipes. Oh, a mournful sound it is. But also, maybe in the music there's a hint of hope, a hint of a new life. Because, well, he's found the place where he feels he truly belongs. Here we are. Here he is in his tree, playing his bagpipes on the back of Brian. And of course, as these things happen, the pigs, he starts off with just a few, but he looks after them kindly and he makes sure they have lots of food and water. And over time, they start to multiply and they start to multiply. And within a few years, he's got a huge herd of pigs. Absolutely huge. Loads of them. And, well, he's very happy. He's got these pigs. Such a huge herd of pigs now that. What about his mother, Anea? His mother was sad to see him go. I didn't mention that. She was very sad to see him go, but I think she understood it was for the best because everyone else was just so horrible to him all the time. Yeah. And yes, his mum can be called Mary. That's fine. So the pig herd gets so big that Hans feels like he's really achieved something. Yeah, all his life he's just been the hedgehog boy at the back of the class, or the useless child at the back of the oven. Now he's a champion pig farmer, pretty much. I mean, he's managed to create quite a huge herd from just a few animals. And so, triumphantly, he decides to take his new herd of pigs back to the village to show everyone that he's not a failure, he's not a weirdo, he's an amazing pig breeder, that's what he is. And so, him and Brian, they lead the way, playing the bagpipes, and the pigs follow on. Hundreds of the things, hundreds. And he takes them all the way back to his village. Now, he's been away from his village for a few years at this point. And to be honest, his dad is hoping that he never comes back. His mum, of course, would love to see him. And when he comes home with all these pigs, he says, Father, look, I have met a whole lot of pig. I bring you these pig. We will have a pig festival. We will eat the pigs. It will be amazing and wonderful. Which is, true, I guess. And there is a great slaughter that day where they kill all the pigs and everyone in the village feasts on sausage meat. I mean, it's wonderful. Oh, hang on. Let me see. I did find some sausages over here, but I think I've put them in the wrong place. Here we go. Here we are. There's a great big sausage collection. Everyone eats sausage, and probably bacon, and probably pork, and probably, there's a lot of pig on the menu, basically. Everyone's happy, except for Hans my Hedgehog's dad. Hans my Hedgehog's dad doesn't care. He didn't want to see his son again. Now his son's come home with all these sausages, thinking that his dad's going to love him just because he's successful. Well, he doesn't. He doesn't even look at Hans in the eyes. He doesn't give him a cuddle. He doesn't even say hello. He just eats the sausages. So, Hans realizes that he'll never, no matter what he does, he'll never be free and he'll never be accepted in his community. And so he goes to his dad at the end of the day, at the end of the festival, and he says, Father, I have one more request of you. Please reshod my rooster. Give him new shoes. They must have come off. And I will leave you. And this time, I will never come home again. Now, he's very sad. His dad is like, yes, got rid of the freak boy. But his dad's not very nice, is he? So, whatever. So, sure enough, his dad takes the rooster back to the market and he puts on some new shoes. We're going with tar shoes, possibly leather shoes, I don't know. And Hans once again says goodbye to his mum. He felt like he'd won this one because he's such a good pig farmer. But he takes another couple of pigs back to the forest with him to start all over again with his herd. And his mum gives him a cuddle, a very careful cuddle, goodbye. And off Hans goes back to the forest. Grace is telling me that Celtic horses used to have crash helmets. That's very cool. Yeah. Cambyses said that his father is merchant, a méchant, maybe. I don't know. I don't know what that means in French. Is he jealous? That's a good question. I think his dad might be jealous of him because he treated poor Hans really badly, didn't he? And Hans comes back with all of the pigs and everyone celebrates and has a brilliant, pig party. And his dad's probably very grumpy. Stupid hedgehog boy coming here, thinking he's better than everyone because he's got all the sausages. Sure. So he's not very nice. He's not a nice man. But you never know. By the end of the story, he might turn nice. We just don't know. So, Hans is there, back once again, playing his tunes in the trees, his bagpipes, when one day a king comes through the forest. Now, this king is completely lost. He was with his royal hunting party, a bit like King Arthur in our story the other day. But, yeah, he's completely lost in the forest. He doesn't know his left from his right, his up from his down, his north from his south, from his east from his west. He's completely befuddled, because to him, every tree looks like every other tree, and he just doesn't know which way to go. He's all alone, and He's completely lost, but what does he hear in the distance? He hears the sweet sound of bagpipes. Ooh, bagpipes, he thinks. There must be some kind of civilization around here. And he stumbles through the forest until he finds the source of the music. And of course, he sees a very strange sight. Up there in the tree is what seems to be some kind of half human, half hedgehog sitting on the back of a rooster playing bagpipes. How strange, thinks the king. But the king does suggest I do spend a lot of time in the palace. I suppose there's a lot of things I haven't seen. Maybe this is quite normal. I'm not sure. He decides he might look it up in a book later to see what the half hedgehog, half boy riding a chicken is. Maybe it has a special name or something. We know it does have a special name. It's called Hans my Hedgehog. But the king, he shouts up, "Hello, you thing up there. Hello, I'm terribly lost. You could help me out." Well, Hans my Hedgehog, he looks down at the lost king and he realizes, well, if I don't help this guy, he's never getting home. This would be terrible. But I suppose I could get something out of it. I'm not just going to help him for free. I mean, I'm not just your friendly neighborhood Hans my Hedgehog here. No, I'll help you out, King. But you need to promise me one thing. Now, the pseudo-Smerdis says that he does not like the sound of bagpipes. Well, that's a shame, because Hans my Hedgehog, he loves the bagpipes. I've always wondered how he learns the bagpipes, because, of course, he asks his dad for the bagpipes. His dad brings them back. And then the next we hear in the story, he's playing those bagpipes up in the tree. I mean, I imagine there's a period of maybe a month or two, or maybe even longer, when he's trying to work out how the bagpipes work and how to play a tune and things. But I'm assuming by the time the king gets there, this is a few years into the bagpipe odyssey, I imagine that Hans is playing pretty good. A pretty mean bagpipe, I reckon. Yeah. I mean, it's not often that I hear bagpipe music myself, but never played by a half hedgehog. But still, I think it's probably cool. Oh, Hans Bileng. Yes, Hans, Hans is his name. Yes, not Hams the hedgehog, Hans the hedgehog. Yes, or Hans, I suppose. Oh, how old is he now? So he must be nearing 20. Hans my hedgehog must be. The king is very old, but by this point, yeah, he was about 15 when he left home. He's been a few years away, so we'll say that he's about 20. Now Hans shouts down from the tree, "I can show you the way out. Easy peasy. But first you must promise me this one thing. One little tiny thing. When you get back to your kingdom, when I show you the way, the first thing that comes to greet you, you must give to me in 1 year. 1 year. It's a bit like our Sir Gawain story, isn't it? You've got to wait a year. You're going to make a pact now, and you're going to pay back in a year." Now the king thinks, well, I do want to get out of the forest, but to be honest with you, I don't really want to give anything to this strange hybrid creature. No, he'd probably want my crown or something, won't he? What if something important is the first thing I meet? I don't want to give it away. No, but, I know. I'll write it in a contract, Hans my Hedgehog. How about that? Yes, we'll write a little contract right now. I'll sign it. I'm promising you the first thing that I meet when I get back to my kingdom. And so Hans comes down the tree. The king pulls a bit of parchment out of his pocket, as any good, well-prepared king does have that. And he writes out a contract that he will give the first thing that he sees, or that he meets, I should say, the first thing he meets when he gets back to his kingdom will be given to Hans my Hedgehog in 1 year. Hans is, he's watching him as he writes it. Now, the king assumes that Hans my Hedgehog cannot read. Yeah, I mean, it's a safe assumption because it's a hedgehog creature that lives in a tree. I mean, they're not famous for their reading skills, I guess. But Hans, of course, he's been to school. And yes, it was a horrible experience, but he did learn to read. And so he's watching closely, and he notices that the king writes this. He writes, I am not going to give anything to this stupid hedgehog freak. He's a terrible hedgehog beastie. If he tries coming for it, I will stab him. And he's stupid and smelly. And he signs it, the king. Very mean, And he makes a big show of it, and he gives it to Hans my Hedgehog. Here you are, look, here's my promise. Can't read it, can you? Evil king. And Hans, he plays it cool. He knows exactly what the piece of paper says, and he knows that the king is planning on betraying him, but he leads the king out of the forest, playing his bagpipes all the way, Brian doing his little chicken strut out through the forest, the king following on behind, and sure enough, the king, they get to the very edge of the forest, right next to the king's kingdom, and the king says, "Well, thank you very much, Hans, my hedgehog. Wonderful, wonderful, brilliant. Thank you." And he steps out of the forest and starts walking towards his castle. Now, Hans, my hedgehog, is watching from the tree line, and he sees the king walk towards his castle, and he sees a little shape, little person, come out of the castle and run towards him and give him a great big hug. It is none other than the king's daughter. That's the first person he meets, the first thing he meets. And so, Hans is now owed one princess in 1 year's time. He turns Brian around and he heads back into the forest. Now let's see what comments we've got going on here. Oh, could I go back to the picture of Brian the cockerel? Yes, well, I'll go back to this picture here. We will see him again in a future picture as well. It's lots of good pictures of him riding on his cockerel. So, let's see. Oh no, my chat has been infiltrated. Let's see. Charlie, if you could please not spam the chat, please, because I know there's lots of comments from people, and I'd like to read some of them. Thank you. Okay. All right. So, yes, he goes off back to his tree with his cockerel, well, his rooster, Brian, that we'll call him, and they hang out in the tree some more, raising pigs, playing bagpipes. I mean, Hans my Hedgehog's life is pretty simple. It's not a complex life, but it's enjoyable. He feels like he fits into the forest, probably in a way that he's never fit into the village or his own family or his school or anything else. Yeah. Now, it's only maybe a matter of weeks that he's out there in the forest again when something bizarre happens. Grace, I'm afraid it's impossible, because if I do that, if I make it so that you can see everything in the chat, then everyone can see everything in the chat. And trust me, the chat is slightly odd at times, so it's best if I keep it away. So, yeah, just a few weeks later, another king gets lost in the forest. A different king from a different kingdom. I mean, not related to the first king. We will call this king King number 2, I suppose. Now, this guy, and I'm not sure what it is about this particular forest or just kings in general, but he's out there in the forest for years, isn't he? Looking after pigs, never meets a king. Then in the space of a few weeks, he's met 2. I mean, that's the way it goes sometimes, I guess. This king, he is also lost. He's wandering through the forest, bumping into things he doesn't know, his left from his right, his up from his down, his east from his south, from his north, from his west, and he's just confused. And as he's bimbling about down there, knocking into trees and tripping over roots, he hears in the distance the beautiful sound of the bagpipes. Ooh. And so he stumbles through the forest until he finds the source of the music. And of course, what does he see? A very strange sight indeed. There's a half man, half hedgehog sat on the back of a rooster in a tree, playing the bagpipes. Very strange. Says the king. This is weird. I've never seen one of those before, but, well, to be honest, he looks quite kind. He looks quite are non-threatening. He's obviously looks after his pigs well. He inspects all the pigs around. Oh yes, good healthy pigs here. Yes, yes, good trotters. Okay, and that rooster that seems to be looked after. Look at his shoes. The rooster has shoes. That's wonderful. Something I might do when I get home to my roosters. So he decides that he could probably trust this hedgehog guy because he seems to be in control of the world around him and seems to be quite a nice guy. And the music's good too. Let's not forget that. Perhaps they are having visions, says Eliza. Maybe these kings are not really seeing hedgehogs. Yes, maybe. I'm sure they must have questioned it in their own brains. Yes, that's right, Pseudomodus. The king is good at looking at pigs and inspecting peasant pigs. Yes, this is true. Yes, he's maybe a bit of a pig expert. So he shouts up the tree, "No, hello, fellow friend. I wonder, do you know where we are? Because I seem to be quite lost, frightfully lost. I do wonder, could you show me out of the forest, please?" And so Hans, my hedgehog, shouts down, "Yes, I can show you out of the forest. No problem." And he says, "All you need to do is promise me this one thing, one little thing. Nothing major, just a little thing. Yes, one for you, for a king like you, not a big thing at all. You must promise that when you get home, the first things that you meet will be given to me in 1 year. 1 year, not straight away, 1 year." So the king thinks for a second. He thinks, well, when I get home, I'll probably be met by my dog. That's usually the first thing that comes to meet me. And, well, I love my dog, I do. But I think it could be I think the dog would be quite happy out here, playing with the rooster and the pigs. Yes, and this hedgehog fellow obviously looks after his animals, so I'm sure the dog would have a good life. It's probably worth it to get out of this forest. Okay. So he agrees to the deal. He doesn't pull out any parchment or pen. He doesn't have to write anything down. Down comes Hans my hedgehog from out of his tree. And the two of them, they shake hands. They shake hands and agree that this is what's going to happen. He doesn't try and trick Hans. He doesn't try and, write horrible things on a piece of paper that he thinks is a contract like the first king did. No, he's pretty good about it. Okay. Yes, I like this king too. Yeah, this king seems to be a more positive kind of king all in all, doesn't he? And so Hans my hedgehog, he jumps on the back of Brian, he leads the way playing his bagpipes, and the king follows until he gets right to the edge of the forest that borders his kingdom. And there in the distance he can see the castle. And the king, he leaves the forest, he says goodbye and thank you very much to Hans my hedgehog, and off he goes back to his castle. Now, for some reason, normally his dog comes out and greets him. But that's not what happens this time. This time the dog's asleep or something. I don't know, or distracted. But it's his daughter that comes out, the princess. She rushes out of the castle and she gives her dad a great big hug. "Oh, wonderful to see you. You've been lost for so long." He says, "Oh, it's wonderful to see you too. Oh, but I do have terrible news. Terrible news indeed. Unfortunately, I kind of made a bargain with a half hedgehog, half man creature that lives in the forest. And, well, long and the short of it is, dear, that in a year you're going to have to go and live with him forever." She says, "Oh, well, that's pretty bad. Is he a nice hedgehog man?" "Oh, yes, he's a splendid fellow. Wonderful, really. You should see his cockerel. It's wonderfully decorated and got beautiful shoes on." She says, "Well, if it's saved your life and has a nice cockerel, I suppose I'll do what I have to do, Father. Sure, I'll go to the forest with the hedgehog man." And I'm sure she's fine about it, really. Now, a year goes by, and Hans my hedgehog, he has got his little contract that the first king, signed to him, and I got my sausages in the wrong order, didn't I? And he goes back. He goes off to the first king, King number 1, we will call him. He goes off to his castle. Now, King number 1 knows that Hans my hedgehog is coming for his prize in 1 year's time. And he has given all of the guards of the castle very strict orders. If you see anything, anybody, anything that is riding on a cockerel come towards the castle, you must shoot at it and try and kill it on sight. It is an enemy of this kingdom. It must die. And so, as the year ticks over, the guards are ready. They're lining the castle walls. They've got bows, they've got arrows, they've got spears. And along comes Hans my Hedgehog, riding his giant rooster. Now, the guards on the guard towers, they pull back their bows and they start to shoot. But Hans is very good at dodging. I should say Brian is very good at dodging because he's the one in control here. He's dodging. He's going back and forth. He's ducking under arrows. He's flapping over arrows. He's going to the left. He's going to the right. He's keeping out of the way. Now, the gates to the castle are shut firmly tight. But that doesn't stop a cockerel like Brian, not when he's got such natty shoes. Brian opens up his wings, whoomph, and flaps his way right over the castle wall, right into the main hall of the king. And there is the king, shivering and shaking. The guards rush forwards, but Hans my Hedgehog, he prickles them with his spines. And if you've ever tried to fight a giant rooster, I would not advise it because they got very sharp feet, especially when they're shod, and they've got a very sharp beak. No. Now, Eliza points out that chickens cannot fly. They cannot fly like other birds, it's true, but they can do a good flap. A chicken can flap up into a tree, or they can flap up over a fence or something. In this case, it's a big chicken, so I guess it can just about make it over a castle wall. So, yes, it makes sense. Well, as much sense as this thing could. Mm-hmm. So, in the end, the king is left there with not much choice. He cannot harm Hans my Hedgehog. He cannot defeat him. And so, he calls for his daughter. Daughter, come here. Looks like you're going to have to go and marry this Hans my Hedgehog after all. No, Daddy, I don't want to. He's disgusting. Look at him. Look at his terrible spiky back and head. Look, he's riding a chicken. I don't want to marry a man who's riding a chicken. I want a man with a carriage or with a pony. Not on a chicken. It's disgusting. Look at him. Ooh. Go and do as you're told, he says. And so, reluctantly, she climbs up on the back of Brian, and the two of them head off towards the forest. But as soon as they get away from the castle, as soon as they enter back into the forest, Hans turns around and says, "Get off. You can't be with me. I don't like you." Where's my German accent gone? "I don't like you. Get off. You are a horrible princess, and your king the father is a horrible king. He lied to me. He wrote horrible words on my contract, my little fake contract that he made me. No, I do not want you. Go away." And he prickles her all over. I mean, it's quite harsh, but here we are. She ends up prickled all over, and her beautiful white princess dress is quite ruined, and she's covered in scratches and sores. Oof, horrible. This is a grim fairy tale after all. And she has to walk back all the way from the forest back to the castle, looking all dishevelled and, it looks it's covered in scratches and scrapes, and, well, her clothes are all ripped and torn, and she has to go back to the castle, and everyone knows that their king is a dishonest king, and their princess is a dishonest princess, who is not even good enough for the half-man, half-hedgehog of the Black Forest. She does look a bit like a vampire, doesn't she, in this? Yes. It's surprisingly hard to find a picture of a prickled princess, I found. Yes, this is as close as I could get. There you go. So, Hans, though, he has now dealt with king number 1. He now needs to go to king number 2. And maybe his fate will be much better there. Maybe. So, he gets on Brian, and together they visit the castle of king number 2. Now, king number 2 also is fully aware that Hans is going to come to take his prize. I mean, this was what they agreed on after all. here we go. He's off to King number two's castle. He's riding Brian, and the king knows he's coming. He made a handshake. He said a promise that he could have the first thing that he saw. So he's told the guards of the castle, if you should ever see a half-man, half-hedgehog creature riding on the back of a chicken, you must let him in. You must give him drinks. You must give him food. You must treat him like another king. Because this guy will one day be my son-in-law. Now, the guards, probably for the last year, after being given this bit of a warning, this bizarre order, have probably just assumed that their king has gone quite mad. Yes, sure, king. Yeah, we'll look out for that half hedgehog, half human. Yeah, riding on a cockerel. Yeah, we'll do that for you. Yeah, I'm sure it'll be fine. Yeah, yeah, if he comes along, we'll give him drinks. We'll give him some cake. Why not? I mean, yeah. Woo-hoo, they're thinking. But, well, the king knows what he's about, doesn't he? And so a lot of the guards, on the day that Hans my Hedgehog, 1 year after the king had returned from the forest, of course, the day that he rides up, the guards are gobsmacked. But at least they have orders. They know what to do. The chief of the guards, he comes down from the castle walls and he bows low to Hans my Hedgehog. And he says, my lord, welcome to the castle. We have been given clear orders to give you food and drink, and in fact, Mabel made you a cake. Please come in. And so, a bit unlike the first castle, of course, he had to break down the door pretty much with his chicken. This time, Hans my Hedgehog is welcomed in like a king, like he deserves, maybe. I'm not sure. It's a hard one, but he comes into the castle, and the people all sort of wave and cheer, and the guards all bow to him. And he's given some food, and he's given some water. I like to think maybe a saucer of milk. But maybe that's rude. Maybe Hans my Hedgehog eats different food. I don't know. I assume he eats sausages, because, well, he had all those pigs. So, I don't know. But he goes on into the castle. He's fed, he's watered, and cat food. Yes, they are supposed to feed them cat food, aren't you? This is true. And so, yes, he comes in and he's given all the wonderful things, and then he is taken to meet the king, and the king says, oh, hello, Hans my Hedgehog. Wonderful to see you. I'm glad you could make it. And then he shouts for his daughter, daughter dearest, come and meet your new husband. His name is Hans my Hedgehog. I mean, obviously, you wouldn't call a half hedgehog, half man anything else, would you? Oh, yeah. Cyrus says you're surprised he's never changed his name. I don't know. I mean, you can't really. I mean, the whole beginning of this story is very weird. His father looks at him and says, there is only one name we can possibly call him. As if it's like there's some divine rule in the heavens that says if you ever meet a half hedgehog, half man, it has to be called Hans my Hedgehog. And even not even just Hans my Hedgehog, that's its name. And so everyone just goes with that. Maybe there's some unknown German law that I don't understand. Hedgehog children must be called Hans my Hedgehog. It's just the way it is. Yeah. Is that his first name or both names? Good question. I think it's his first name. I think he only has a first name. He's just Hans my Hedgehog. Maybe he's like Hans my Hedgehog Smith, but I think it's probably just that's it. Hans my Hedgehog. Yeah. So along comes the princess, and she bows very deeply, and she says hello very, very politely. She doesn't look particularly happy about it, I must say. I mean, after all, she's just been told, and well, she's known for a year, but she knows that she needs to get married to this hedgehog guy, and he seems very kind. I mean, Hans is very polite, and he bows low, and he kisses her hand, all the kinds of things that a prince would do to a princess. But it is hard to shake the fact that he's a very prickly fellow. Yeah, he's very hedgehog-ish. So it is a bit hard on her, I must say, but a promise is a promise. And of course, her father did promise that she would marry him, or at least belong to him. And she's had a year to prepare, to get used to the idea, and it's all good. Oh, Heidi says that his name should be Hans my Hedgehog Gerald Smith. Maybe, yes. Maybe his middle name is Gerald. I don't know. um, so, uh, the king goes a step further because he doesn't really want to see his princess go away forever. And so he suggests that Hans comes and lives in the castle. Yes, come live in my castle, and you can marry my daughter, and then when I die, I am rather old after all, when I die, then, well, you can be king of the castle, I suppose, you and my beautiful daughter here. You can, we'll have a lovely kingdom ruled over by a hedgehog boy, man, thing, with riding a chicken, I don't know. But anyway, the two of them, they agree to be married on the very next day. Now, it's a bit of a bizarre wedding. I'm not sure how many of you have ever been to a wedding, but um, in in a wedding, usually there's like, a traditional wedding at least. There's certain standards. The bride, she dresses up nice. The groom, he puts on a nice suit. They come together. They do the whole promising vow thing. They exchange rings. Generally speaking, in a standard wedding, the groom is not riding a chicken. But this is not a standard wedding. This is a bit different. They try and make it standard, but yeah, it's going to be slightly different. So we can see here that Hans, my hedgehog, gets married to the princess, still on the back of Brian. I suppose we're talking about getting the height right here. I mean, in this picture, at least, he's a tiny hedgehog boy. Still, he's roughly the size of a hedgehog. In other versions, you'll see him as like a man-sized hedgehog, or half hedgehog, riding a giant rooster. So it's hard to tell. But it's a bit of a strange wedding day. It's bizarre. The guests aren't quite sure what to make of it. As old Auntie Mildred at the back there. Is is she marrying? Is she marrying a hedgehog? Is it a hedgehog riding on the back of a rooster? That's very strange. Kids these days, aren't they weird? Yes, back in my day, we'd never have married a hedgehog boy riding on the back of a chicken. No, it's very bizarre indeed. But that's how old people always are at weddings, critical. Um, the king, he's kind of happy, kind of not, because, well, he did want to find someone to marry his daughter because, well, he needs someone to look after the kingdom when he's gone, but at the same time, he's got a hedgehog boy. He's got a Hans my Hedgehog to rule the kingdom. Is that good enough? He's not quite sure yet. Not yet. The people of the city, they're not or the people of the castle, they're not quite sure whether this is a happy day or a sad day, because the bells are ringing and people are celebrating, and there's a great big feast for everyone because it's a royal wedding. But at the same time, everyone can't help but notice that the princess spends most of the day crying softly because, well, she'd always imagined her wedding day, and her wedding day had never, in any of her imaginations, ever been, well, her getting married to a Hans my Hedgehog. So she's a bit sad, but she's going to do it anyway because she is honourable, and her dad made a promise, and it saved her dad's life after all, and she does quite like the sound of bagpipes, so maybe she'll get on. Maybe they'll get on in the end. Yeah. um, Oh yes, it does look like we've got a bit of a ruckus in the background here in our picture. I hadn't noticed that. Yes, well spotted, Rebecca. Um, so the two of them are married on a kind of a half happy, half sad day, and together after the wedding they have the party and everyone has lots of fun. They dance together. We can imagine maybe at one point, everyone's quiet and Hans starts playing his bagpipes, quite a romantic song, and the two of them, well, the three of them, Hans and Brian and the princess, they dance around the room, having their romantic first dance of their marriage. Oh, a bit weird though, bit weird. Um, and then they go off, and they're just about to head off to bed when Hans turns to the princess and says, I have something that I have to do before we are properly married. And he turns to some guards. He says, guards, I'm going to go into this room. and I'm going to leave my prickles here. When I am in that room, you need to take those prickles and you need to throw them on a fire. Ooh, the guards say, okay. Now, this is the first part in the story you may have noticed that we've realized that Hans my Hedgehog could take his prickles off. Why he hasn't done this before, I don't know. But maybe it's something about being married. Maybe some kind of weird spell has been broken, but he goes into the room. There's a sound. I like to imagine the sound of a zip. Zip, and a hand pokes back through the door with a great big load of quills, hedgehog spikes, and he chucks the prickles out of the door and slams the door behind him and locks it. The princess doesn't know what's going on, but the guards, they have their orders. Take away the prickles and burn them on a fire. So they go to the great big fireplace in the middle of the castle and they throw the quills on. The quills, they blacken, they soften, and of course, they are burnt to nothing but ash. Now, all the while this is happening, the guards outside of Hans my Hedgehog's room are quite distressed, because as the quills are burning, all they can hear from Hans's room is screaming. Ah! Ow! Ouch! 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 Oh, it hurts! But they don't go in. They've been told to leave him. They've been told, burn the quills, leave me alone in here. And then, when the quills are finally burnt to ash, the cries of Hans get softer until he is silent. And the guards, they wait for the next morning. They're kind of wondering, have we killed him? Have we somehow killed him by burning his quills? I don't know. So the next morning, they open up the door to Hans's chamber, and there he is. Quite a handsome young man. Nothing about the hedgehog about him. He's just a human. But he is, from top to toe, completely black. Black with soot, as if he'd been thrown on a fire. Now, the princess and the king, they come into the chamber. They're told by the guards what's going on. And there he is, this black as soot man, rolled up on the floor, looking like he's in a bit of pain, to be honest, but otherwise completely human. And so the princess goes over and wakes him up and says, Hans, my hedgehog? Hedgehog? Hans? Just Hans? I don't know. Are you okay? And he says, yes, I've had a hard night, but please help me wash off this soot, and then we shall be married properly. And so the guards come, the servants come, the maids come, and they put him in a great big bath, and they scrub him all over until all the black soot is gone, and what's left is a fine prince. And then they dress him in the clothes of a fine prince. Fingersnail says, what happened to the pigs? We'll get to the pigs. And Hans is now in the perfect situation to be a real prince. He's married to the princess. Everything is great. And in fact, they go out into the city that day, into the castle, I should say, and they get remarried. They have another wedding ceremony, but this time the old women are far less moany. The townspeople are far less confused, and the princess is not crying at all. Unless, of course, you can count tears of happiness, which we don't count in this sense. So, now, Hans is now the prince of a fine castle, and a few years later, yes, the king does die. He was an old king. But before he dies, he teaches Hans everything he knows about being a good and noble king. And the king and queen, Hans, not my hedgehog, and his princess, they become a wonderful king and queen in their own right. Now, I like to think that Hans goes out in the forest and grabs his pigs together. And we do know that not long after they're married, Hans and his wife, the princess, they head down with their herd of pigs down to the village where Hans was born. And they see his mother, and his mother is overjoyed. But to her, he's just as beautiful as he ever was. He's no real different. She loved her hedgehog boy, and she loves her human boy. Same thing, she says. And his father comes out. Oh, and he's very sorry, he says. He's very sorry for treating him bad all those years. It's not his fault. He's got an allergy. He's got a phobia of hedgehogs. Oh, it's not my fault, he says. And Hans gives him the pigs and says, "Here, Dad, take these pigs. Have another sausage festival. It'll be great. And if you ever want to visit the castle, you can do. Because I forgive you, Father. It's not your fault that you were afraid of hedgehogs, me being a hedgehog boy. But maybe we can be friends now." And so the story ends with Hans, not my hedgehog, his princess, and his parents coming to live in the castle. And, well, they all live happily ever after. Cyrus asks, does he as a king know how to navigate a forest? I think he must do, yes. Hans my hedgehog, or Hans not my hedgehog, Hans the king is never going to get lost in the forest, is he? Yes. So there you go. He knows his way around. People saying it's a weird story. Yes, a slightly weird story. This is true. And yes, in our picture, he does have slightly spiky hair. True. Maybe there will always be a touch of the hedgehog about him. All right. Thank you very much, everyone. That was Hans my hedgehog. Hopefully you enjoyed that one. A bit of a bizarre story, but there is a message in there somewhere, maybe. If we can give it some thought. All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a very good week. Bye. Oh. It's not going away.